Hey everyone, thank you for coming to watch my second video. Today we're going to be creating this pendant that I designed out of brass. Before you start, make sure to pause and read the description below. Now let's get started. First you're going to print out the template to fit your stone. Then you're going to take some clear tape and put it on top. This will help prevent the design from getting messed up once you glue it down. Now time to cut out the design. You can cut over the ring components for the necklace, since it was just a suggested place to solder it down. Ta-da! I put my stone on top to try to imagine what it's going to look like when I finish it. Now I'm going to see where it fits on my metal. Now take your 600 grit sandy paper and sand the base so that way it gets a good clear connection from the paper to the metal. There is a link for all the products that I'm using down in the description below. Now time to let it dry. You don't necessarily need a fan, but I find that it helps. This is what it looks like when it's dry. I'm using this 1/16 drill bit with my rigid drill, and I'm going to use this cutting lube so that way I can drill the holes easily. You're going to want to drill the holes in these positions because these are the sections that we're going to be cutting out. And if you want to be more precise when drilling, then you're going to want to take a center punch and a hammer and put the center punch where you want the drill to go, and you're going to hit it a couple times. This will create a divot that the drill bit will follow. You're going to want to take your 600 grit sandpaper and rub it on the back where you created the holes. This will prevent the excess metal from catching on the wooden bench pin when you are sawing out the design. Now you're going to take your jeweler's saw with a size 3 blade and cut the outer part of the design. Make sure you get as close to the design as you possibly can. This will save time during filing later. Once you're finished cutting out the design, you're going to want to take your needle files and file away at the rough edges. I like to use a flat file for filing away at the curves that point outwards, and a dome file for the curves that point inwards. If you find that you're using needle files a lot, a tip would be to put some tape on the end so that way when you stab yourself it won't hurt as much. Now you're going to take your piece and jeweler's saw and take the blade and put it through the hole. You're going to want to start at the outer design parts and work your way inwards when sawing. Your sawing doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to get as close to the lines on the design as possible. You don't want to waste time later sawing away at the excess metal. Sometimes when you want to get into tight corners, you don't have to follow the line of the design. You can make your own line, go back and make another line, and then cut into it later so that way it's easier. When it comes to thin lines of metal, I like to file the outer edges when it's still connected to the majority of the metal. This will help keep from bending it when you gotta file the rough edges later. For some reason, my camera didn't record the last 4 pieces that I needed to saw out. So pretend that I cut them out the same way I just cut these pieces out. So when I was done with the cutting and the filing, I tried scraping the glue off because I needed that face to put the bezel on. After that, I found out the best way to get rid of that stuff is to set it on fire. Then put it in your pickle pot. Once that was done, it was time to start making my bezel. I'll probably make a video to explain this whole step, but for now there are plenty other videos on YouTube for this. All you need to do is search up on YouTube how to make a bezel. Since the bezel was too tall for my stone, I took my metal scribes and drew a line. Then I took my metal shears and cut against that line, trying to make the line as straight as possible. When cutting, the bezel will tend to curve a little bit, so I'll use my nylon flat nose pliers and rub against the metal to try to straighten it out. Now I'll take my regular flat nose pliers and try to make the bottom half of it straight, so that way when they connect to it, it'll be flush. Having it flush is very important, so that way you make a good solder joint. Now I'm taking my needle nose tweezers and putting some easy solder right at the joint seam. Don't forget to flux your bezel before this part. Now I'm going to use my micro torch to heat up the bottom until the solder flows. I kind of didn't trust the way that the seam looked, so I stuck another piece of easy solder and had another go at it. Sometimes this won't work because it gets dirty after you put heat to it. When you're done with that part, make sure to quench it in water and then throw it into your pickle pot. Next, I use 14 gauge brass wire to make the holders for the necklace of this piece. I take my baling tool and bend the wire to create circles. Then I cut it with my flush cutters. I make sure that the flush side is facing the inward of each piece. Then I use my tools to adjust it so that way it closes. Once I'm done with that, I take my bezel and file the bottom part. I also sand the piece and all of the components that are going to be touching each other. They all need to be clean in order for them to create a solid joint. Next is to lather my piece with my boric acid mix. This mix will help prevent fire scale and damage from overheating. Now for my favorite part, the fire. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area whenever you are working with fire or whenever you are soldering. Flex your bezel and the connecting components and then put it onto your piece. Here I use the same gauge wire that the connecting components are made out of, so that way they level out. This will help the components solder to the back plate since they're going to be at an even height. Because the solder comes in a wire form when I purchase it, I cut them into little tiny pieces and store them into a little container. I label each little container with the different types of solder. That way I don't get them mixed up. I put the solder pieces in all the areas that I want connected, along with some flux to help keep it in place. Now time for some more fire. You're going to want to heat the piece up until it turns like a bright red. Right now the video is playing back in real time, so you can see about how long it'll take before you get to that point. Make sure to keep an eye on the solder, and you'll see the point when it starts to flow. Right about now. So the first time I did this, the solder didn't flow all the way around the bezel, so I had to do it a second time. That one I didn't film, so that way you don't have to watch me do this process all over again. Of course, when you're done, you're going to want to take it and quench it in the water and then throw it into your pickle pot. After you pickle it, you're going to want to throw it into your hydrogen peroxide and vinegar mix. This will eat away at the copper that tends to form when you're heating up brass. Aren't the bubbles so pretty? After I did it a second time, I checked to see if the stone fit. Once I confirmed that it fit, I started sanding. I started from 600 grit and then worked my way to 800, and then to 1000, then to 1500, then to 2000. Then when I was done hand sanding it, I took it to my polishing lathe. Here I used the Tripoli that had came with the lathe when I purchased it. If you can't seem to get into certain areas, you can always use a Dremel with a flex shaft and a smaller polishing wheel to get into the finer details. Now time to wash the piece with soap and water to get rid of the polishing compounds. And here's the finished piece. There are definitely places where I messed up, but I think I learned a lot from this piece. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what else you would like to see me make. And don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow jewelry makers. Definitely hit the like and subscribe button if you think this is beautiful. And when you make your own, definitely share with me. Have a great day. Bye!